I am too sugoi-pilled. All media I consume is anime, manga or Japanese games. So, I'm setting out on a quest to watch one normal movie every day for the upcoming month. A personal rehab, a detox, or a course correction, if you will. But it's mostly just an excuse to shorten my backlog of required viewing films that I've simply not gotten around to yet. A lot of these movies are ones that I can guarantee the vast majority of you have already seen, so I doubt you'll find any shocking recommendations in here. It's just a vehicle to review films that would be insane to do standalone slop videos on in the current year. So let's see if I make it to the end of the month, or if I go insane before then. I don't know, how do you add stakes to this premise? Ooh, we're starting with a capital B banger. La La Land has the sauce. It has the juice. It has that special something something. La La Land fits quite nicely into this accidental pattern I've created for myself, as it is a movie about dreams. A bittersweet musical love story about an aspiring actress and a struggling jazz pianist. Now, I haven't exactly seen a lot of musicals, but if they're this good, I've gotta change that. It's a beautiful movie on all fronts. It's wonderfully shot, it's amazingly lit, and it has a fantastic art direction. One of my favorite things a movie can do in this department is have a visual direction that actively contradicts itself. The mixture of 50s and modern day items creates a timeless vibe that ensures the movie will age more gracefully. As you may know, I don't really know a lot about music, and especially not musicals, but from what I can tell, this score was masterfully composed. The use of returning motifs tickled my brain, but that's kinda where my knowledge ends. Anyway, the musical sequences were so fun, and there were some great show tunes. La La Land also places an extreme weight upon its two leads. They're basically the only two characters in the film. Both Emma Stone as Mia and Ryan Gosling as Seb knock it out of the park. They both give their all in the musical scenes, and the romance was enjoyable to watch play out. With all of that said, do I think this is a great movie? No, I mimicked the film itself and completely ignored its fundamental and glaring flaws. Namely, that it's showcasing very conservative values for some unexplainable reason. It's a movie partly about a jazz musician trying to revive the genre to its glory days, and who is cast in that role? Ryan Gosling. I mean, he is acting out of his mind here, it's a stellar performance, but he shouldn't have been here to begin with. I've really been trying to think of a good faith reason for why he was chosen, but I can't. It does the story a disservice on multiple fronts. Not only does it promote the white savior trope, the movie also tries to do a sort of forbidden romance thing, which just doesn't work nowadays with the two straight white actors. It's boring, it's unrealistic, it's overdone. The cast is predominantly white, which again is very strange for a film focused on jazz. The only real black character is Seb's bandmate, who's treated as a crazy minor antagonist for trying to evolve the genre. I think the most egregious scene was in the club, where the two white main characters are dressed in bright colors to contrast with the black extras dressed in brown hues. It twisted the art direction I'd come to love into something comically racist. On top of all that, it also shows very boxed in generals and all of that jazz. So, in conclusion, I'd adore La La Land if I was just a smidge dumber. But as it is, I can't say I do, despite all its merits. Historical revisionism, especially in this political climate, isn't really my thing. Okay, I just want to make it extra clear that there won't be any sort of rhyme or reason to the movie selected going forward. Why I'm saying this is because I started overthinking about what I'm gonna watch today, and eventually time just ran out, so I just chose the shortest one on my list. And that was 12 Angry Men, an absolute classic, and for good reason, I've come to find out. Everyone knows the premise to this movie. It's just 12 pissed off lads in a room for the entire runtime. And it's so thoroughly engaging. Who knew that watching some middle-aged dudes argue over a court case for 90 minutes could be so entertaining? Well, a lot of people. It's an immensely well-known film. The premise puts the entire weight onto the character writing and acting. If even just one of these guys wasn't up to par, the entire thing would crumble like a house of cards. Okay, maybe not everyone gets equal attention. The well, geez guy kinda got a short end of the stick. Or am I just saying that because that genre of guy has been extinct for half a century? Anyway, if you watch basically any of my other videos, you know that the thing that's always the most important for me is great characters. Boy oh boy does this succeed in that. We barely know anything about these people. 10 of them remain completely unnamed throughout the entire runtime. 2 are only revealed right at the end. Yet I still feel like I know everything about them, and that's not because their character writing is shallow. They feel really real. Mannerism, speech pattern, and of course the dialogue are all on point. But what surprised me the most was that it has aged incredibly well. Like, of course some techniques and such are outdated, the cast would probably not look the same if it was made today, but outside of that I can't really react to it like this image, like I expected. It's a court case about a Latin American kid and whether or not he gets executed for a crime he may or may not have committed. There's an antagonist that goes on an insane tirade about how he should be killed because he's brown, and every other guy in the room treats him as crazy because of it. This movie was made in 1957. How the hell are we having the same discussions but on such a larger scale today? An argument could be made that it's even slightly ACAB. There is mentions of police brutality and unfair questioning under heavy stress. One of the key takeaways from it is that the American justice system sucks ass. Like bro, this movie is 70 years old. The actors were probably racist as hell, but the fact that the film itself holds up to this extent is insane. Overall, it's so good. Somehow even more woke than a film from 2016. It could and for sure has been dissected in film studies for 70 years and it makes complete sense. Incredibly clear focus that's presented in a way that's just admirable and so fundamentally influential that it's basically impossible to pinpoint what exactly it has affected. Man, I wanna play Ace Attorney now. Time to repeat the obvious. It's Oppenheimer. You've already seen 50 reviews from people a lot more qualified than me that go into way more detail than I'd ever bother to do. Of course it's great, it's Oppie we're talking about. Unfortunately, I'm way too lazy and a bit too stupid to fully psychologically deconstruct Oppie, so instead I'll just give my surface level takes. For those that somehow don't know, Oppenheimer is a dramatization of the life of real-life scientist Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer, going over his work on the Manhattan Project and how it affected him personally. It's the furthest thing from a relaxing background watch you could possibly get. You need to be locked in for 3 hours straight if you want to have a chance at understanding it, because the main emotion it wants to instill in the viewer is being overwhelmed. The pacing's breakneck at times, the story's not told in chronological order, there's so many names and things you need to be constantly juggling in your mind, kinda like how Bob Oppie had to. And what this movie really tries to do is put you into his shoes. It makes no effort to be an impartial documentary. No, what we're seeing is very much his biased worldview. This is evidenced by multiple points, most obviously, when his mind starts to crack from the guilt, we see more and more of his illusions. But it's also apparent in how the people closest to him are portrayed. It's very obvious we're missing big chunks of Gene's life simply because Oppie wasn't paying attention. His family is basically just set dressing since his favorite child was a weapon of mass destruction. Why I bring this up is because a common criticism I've seen of the film is that it didn't focus enough on the actual consequences of the bomb droppings, and while there for sure could have been a version of this film with heavier emphasis placed on those parts, it isn't this one. And at least personally, I'd rather have those stories told from a Japanese perspective instead of being put through Hollywoodization. I guess a similar thing could be said about alleged sexism in the movie. Is Oppenheimer the movie sexist, or was it just Oppenheimer the man? It's a really convenient excuse, isn't it? An argument could however be made that this is just 3 hours of propaganda, a sob story to make us feel bad for a mass murderer. That's true, I won't argue against it. But I think it's a bit more nuanced. The film portrays the US government as power-hungry and evil, no regard for human life as long as it gets them what they want. It also doesn't really slander communism as an ideology, it more so portrays it as a beaten-up underdog, which I found really interesting. I didn't expect such a massive Hollywood production to be kinda pro-socialism, but that's awesome sauce. Anyway, that's enough politics. Rapid fire on the final points. I really enjoyed the out-of-order structure. It made the story into a puzzle, and it kinda added to its breakdown. The sound editing is probably the best I've ever heard. The use of both score and sound is actually crazy. The scene where Oppenheimer is giving a speech after the bombs have dropped is so unbelievably peem. Overall, it's really good, though some parts kinda felt a bit too dramatized and not real enough. Unfortunately for me and the purposes of this video, the only real way to review it is to really pick it apart and see what makes it tick. But it's 3 hours long and I need to get this segment done today, so instead, I'll just leave it at this. Oppenheimer is fantastic at what it does, but it is often critiqued for the things it doesn't do, which in my opinion isn't really fair, since that'd be like hating someone's diary because it didn't accurately describe the time's global events. It's a piece of a larger puzzle, best viewed in combination with other media portraying the events from other perspectives. Only day 4 and I'm already bending the rules. Because I've technically seen the Grand Budapest Hotel before, though only the first 15 minutes. My family hated it so much, so they turned it off after that point. But I really like Wes Anderson movies. Big statement coming from someone that's only seen 2, I know, but you can't argue with a 100% hit rate, can you? TGBH is kinda hard to give an exact premise for due to its structure, but I guess that the core plot can be summarized as the lobby boy and the concierge of the esteemed Grand Budapest Hotel have to clear their names of various crimes, only some of which they actually committed. And wacky hijinks ensue. It's just very charming and very fun. Yes, I'm just gonna give the most basic ass takes you've ever heard about this film. I am a mass-produced movie reviewer after all. The film's incredible visually. The use of colors, the mixture of stop-motion segments, and how perspective is utilized is what makes Wes Anderson, well, Wes Anderson. It's very snappy and I really like how it's written. My favorite example of the writing is the recurring bit of the over-the-top poetry. It's so stupid, but it adds so much to the film's vibe. I wouldn't really call it a hilarious comedy per se, at most it just got a silent chuckle out of me. However, it sucks that the film is so heavily carried by such a bad person. Ralph Fiennes' performance as Gustav is the core of the entire thing, but I won't give him any praise, since in real life he sucks ass. I don't really know how to continue glazing this film after that, so instead I'll just wrap it up. The Grand Budapest Hotel is a movie I'd say anyone would be able to enjoy, but I do have evidence to the contrary. It's just charming comfort food, if you ignore the elephant in the room. You should watch it, but not support him monetarily if you catch my drift. By the way, it's first now that I realized that all the movies I've seen so far have had black and white segments as well as some sort of connection to the 30s through 50s. Probably hard to believe, but that was entirely accidental. So let's see if the pattern continues tomorrow. It didn't. How do I even do this? Lady Bird is a movie about a very specific type of person in a very specific place in a very specific time. It follows the titular Lady Bird's life through her final year in a Catholic high school in 2002's Sacramento. It's uncomfortably real and deeply personal, but with that comes one small personal issue. I was born in 2005 and grew up in Northern Europe, so it didn't and probably never could have viscerally attacked me in the same way that I've seen it done for others. I had heard it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I think you need to be able to see yourself in it to love it. Don't get me wrong, I still liked it, but I've seen other unrelatable movies that I liked more. I think partially that can be attributed to the fact that it's about an awkward teenage girl, and anytime there is a slightly awkward scene in a movie, I, without fail, want to throw myself out a window. Anyway, Lady Bird just feels extremely real in every aspect. I don't really know how else to put it. It's well acted all around, it's pretty to look at, I am just simply not the right person to review it. And that's perfectly okay. The entire point of this video is to watch stuff I normally wouldn't. This isn't really a series of reviews or an essay, it's basically just a diary. Not being able to properly talk about it does have one big benefit though. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier since it means less work to do, and this shit is already destroying my psyche. Could I do it? Sure, but it's way more effort than it's worth. If you grew up in the most boring part of the US in the 2000s, go watch it and review it yourself. So, I can't say I fully got this one. My attention may have been a bit split during my allotted movie time, and I don't exactly have the breathing room to re-watch anything. Sorry. The Big Lebowski is about Jeff the Dude Lebowski, who gets caught up in a big-ass conspiracy with kidnapping, stolen money, but all he wants is his rug back. I guess it's a movie about ideology, that you should stand for something, whatever that may be. Don't be like the dude, who just kinda drifts through the plot and goes along with any and all philosophies he encounters. Look at him. You don't want to be that guy now, do you? It's undoubtedly a good movie, but at least for me personally, I didn't really find it that gripping. Having a protagonist that never really cares about most things makes it kinda hard for the movie to be engaging, or maybe I'm just saying that because I was expecting something entirely different. On top of that, the film's focus felt kinda split and messy. It's a detective story, it's about masculinity, it's about getting your shit together, there's meaningless plotlines around every corner. And with movies like this, it's so easy and most likely correct to say it's intentional and the point, but I don't know, I feel like it could be presented in a way that was still engaging. Or maybe I'm just not artsy enough yet. Also, watching a movie centered about nihilism in current day is basically impossible. That one Smiling Friends episode has ruined any sort of discussion about the topic for me and many others. A truly pathetic way of thinking catered to lazy cowards. Your life is probably the only one you'll ever experience, so why wouldn't you live to your fullest? I would need to read up on a lot of philosophy to truly debunk it, but it's just such a stupid ideology. The movie itself is still solid and I understand why it's a classic, it just didn't click with me. The usual elements are all good here, cinematography, acting, etc. I'm just not creative enough to write a unique segment about those topics for each and every movie here. It's also a lot easier to point out when they're lacking in those regards. I prefer complaining to praising after all. Wait, I get it now. Me not caring about the movie is the point of the movie itself. Like how Oppenheimer made me feel overwhelmed to make me understand Oppie, The Big Lebowski instills apathy in the viewer to turn them into the dude. I take back everything I said, this movie's unrivaled genius. Also, I would be tarred and feathered by only myself really if I didn't bring this up, but watching this while having committed the entirety of Chainsaw Man to memory made a lot of things click into place. I leave it at that. God, I need to watch something lighter tomorrow where not everyone's an asshole. This shit is draining me. I hit the jackpot. This is exactly what I was yearning for yesterday. Delicious garbage. The acting sucks, the writing's horrendous, the cinematography is nauseating at times, it's a bit racist and kinda sexist. The plot's not as ass, but still not great. It's absolute cinema. Speed Racer, that's his legal name, has to drive fast in order to put Jeff Bezos behind bars and save his family. It is objectively the stupidest movie ever put to screen. Just look at it. But because of that, it's also one of the most fun movies ever made. Just look at it. Speed Racer is the ultimate litmus test to see who's awesome sauce and who's not. Maybe it's just nostalgia speaking, my long forgotten love for the Spy Kids movies peeking its head out, but I absolutely love the visuals. And if you don't, I will think less of you as a person. They would kill you if you made a movie that looked like this today. The editing would have you blacklisted from the industry, the color grading would have you hanged, and the general design choices would have your family crucified. But the visuals by themselves wouldn't create this masterpiece. No, a big part of its charm comes from the fact that it's ass. Speed Racer's actor can't act for shit and gets mocked by even the child actor and the monkey. By the way, they never address why there's a chimp. He's just there. Anyway, his line deliveries are hilarious. Completely deadpan one-liners after sending a man to certain death. The lines themselves are almost on the level of the Star Wars prequels. Less Shakespearean, but similar vibes. However, I would never ever wish for something like this to have a logical script. It sounding so unnatural is what elevates the whole thing. And the problematic elements aren't even that egregious, it's just what you can expect from something like this from the year 2008. I expected it to be a lot worse in this regard. Stuff like this tends to have way more extreme caricatures. Also, when the credits started rolling and I saw that this was directed by the Wachowski sisters, I knew that nothing about this was accidental. They 100% knew what they were doing. If I wasn't as lazy as I am, I would look it up to confirm it, but nah, I'm gonna spread misinformation. But I know they were creating in their magnum opus. Matrix is mid, this is true peak. We really need something like this in today's cinemas. Not exactly this, of course, but I would like to watch something stupid and wacky on the big screen again. Everything's too safe and self-aware nowadays. But that's it, Speed Racer isn't really a movie to review, it's an experience to enjoy. Watch it to test how epic you really are. I wonder if this is gonna cut to complete tonal whiplash. The funny thing to do would have been to cut to the movie Whiplash. However, I feel like it would make me want to kill myself, so instead, I watched Casablanca. Everyone has to watch Casablanca, right? It's a bit hard to watch movies like this in the modern day. They are so fundamental that they come off as boring and formulaic. You have to untangle everything you've ever seen to find out how influential Casablanca really is. Some things, though, are more obvious than others. Like, it's very clear that series like James Bond took major inspiration from this movie and built further on top of it. So if you have seen one of those and then watch Casablanca, you end up thinking, oh, so this is like James Bond without the action spy stuff. Yeah, this movie is mostly just a bitter guy running a bar during wartime and being sad about an ex-girlfriend. You could probably trick someone into thinking that this was the very first Bond film if you just chose the right clip. I think the most interesting thing about it is the time it was made in and the setting it inhabits. Every other World War II movie I've seen was made at least a bit after the war, but this was made during it. It kinda adds something to it, you know? Knowing that while watching makes the situation more real in a way than if it was made today. But it being made in 1942 and taking place in Africa comes with what you expect. I've already been over this. One thing I've never really gotten the appeal of is old love stories. They always lack any sort of substance. The writing of women in movies like this is always so bare bones, and since love's a two-way street, it soils the whole package. The damsel in distress, the wife archetype, the woman as a MacGuffin, all incredibly sauceless tropes. Yeah, I know it's a product of the times and all, but that still doesn't mean I have to like it in current day. I don't have to explain it, you're clever and woke enough to figure it out by yourself if you haven't clicked off by this point. One thing that did impress me though is the cinematography. I wanna know how they filmed it, some of these shots are really impressive for their time. In conclusion, Casablanca is a movie you probably have to watch at some point. But less so as a bucket list item and more so as homework. Cinema has come a long way since then, so unless you're a true cinephile or are gonna write a paper on the thing, I don't really think you're gonna get much out of it. Hell yeah, I love red, white and blue-blooded slop again. Let's blow up some orphans. Slop Gun is a high school sports movie with a military fighter pilot coat of paint. Partway through it, I thought, this is gayer than I expected, which was promptly followed by an extended, oh. My goat somehow always relevant. How does she do it? But Top Gun is the quintessential 80s action flick. It follows every trope in the book to an extent that you almost assume it's a parody, which had me wondering, is it actually tropey or did it just set the precedent? Thinking about it makes my head hurt. I can barely remember what other 80s action movies I've seen beside this and Die Hard. I'll probably remember while editing and put a really mean-spirited editor's note on screen right now. The point of watching Top Gun for me wasn't really an excursion into genre or just to see it. Nah, I just wanted to be able to see the sequel. That one's glazed to high heaven, so it has to be great, right? Knowing me though, I doubt I'll get around to it during this marathon and instead put it off for another few years. When I think about it, it's actually crazy that I haven't seen this movie yet. It's like a diversion in the timeline. This wasn't meant to happen. Growing up, my friends were all obsessed with military shit. I never really got it, but they have more hours in War Thunder than the rest of the human populace combined. My dad knows 2 melodies total, and one of them happens to be Top Gun's main theme, which he's constantly humming. But somehow, the thought of actually watching this movie never came up. Though my opinion on it would have probably ended up being quite similar to what it is right now, which is to say, it's okay. Back then it would have been because I just didn't get the hype around planes. Why watch real planes fly in sky when you can watch spaceship fly in space? Yeah, I was a kid genius, I know. Now that my brain has degraded and I'm no longer in my prime, that takes more base in the fact that I can see the propaganda, Tom Cruise really can't act, and the romance is dog shit. Those 3 things are also the trifecta that forms this movie's core, which doesn't really leave me much to chew on. What it does score higher marks on is, as usual, the visual department. It's shot well, the action sequences are engaging and easy to follow, the colors pop, and of course, god damn is jacket's cool. I need that shit. But most importantly, the underlying gay tension kept me very much enthralled. Couldn't have been accidental, right? I guess I can watch Goldie's video about it now that I've seen it to find out. Except for the school focus and the on-screen gay sex, it's what I expected. A fun turn your brain off movie with good action. Wait, while saying that, my few remaining brain cells managed to hit each other and piece together this 2-piece puzzle. Top Gun is a shonen sports anime. Woo, yeah, double digits. Oh god, I'm only a third of the way through. Yeah, I know, watching a movie a day doesn't seem that hard of a challenge, but writing, planning, recording and editing a video a day is. Just 20 more. Breakfast Club is now for sure another movie that I have seen. If you ignore everything bad about it, it's good I guess. John Breakfast and his club get stuck in detention and find out that the others are more interesting than they thought. It's a film that has been retold, reimagined and remade in every single way possible. If you have seen a movie or a show about characters being stuck in a confined location sometime in the last 40 years, chances are Breakfast Club was a key inspiration. That's not to say that it was the first, it's just the one. In essence, it's a prison movie with a high school paint job. The characters are stuck in a room and they tell stories about how they got locked up and through that grow closer. Like in prison movies. I guess I have to complete the trifecta tomorrow with a military movie that looks like a jail movie. But I'm probably not gonna do that. Doesn't sound like a very fun premise. This film both has parts that have aged very gracefully and some that have lethal amounts of black mold. I'll start with the good stuff. The core message of The Breakfast Club is to not judge others by appearance. Well, appearance isn't really the right word, they're all cis-het white people. Shit, I said I'd be nice. What I meant to say was that it's about not assuming stuff about others. These kids are all messed up in their own ways. And their problems are all timeless. Neglectful parents, peer pressure, stuff like that. The acting's overall stellar, the characters feel very real, and everyone's perfect for the role they have. Okay, maybe not John, he looks 36. The camera work isn't afraid to get a little silly with it, which is nice. The Scooby-Doo chase sequence and the dance montage are fun examples of this. That's all cool. It's also good at Okay, enough beating around the bush. I have to address why I can't bring myself to like this thing. The makeover scene is one of the most asinine things ever put to screen. It has been criticized to high heaven, but I mean, come on. Yeah, we need to turn the old girl heteronormative so she can date the jock. Why on God's green earth would you do a makeover scene to make the girl look chopped? But mainly, there's just so many sexist double standards to unpack here. Why doesn't the old guy need to wear a suit and cut his hair to date the popular girl? Oh right, it's because it's the girl's job to fit the guy's expectations. That's why him and the jock can remain pretty much the same throughout the story, just opening up a bit, while the girls have to change a ton to conform to their will. How could I forget that? I really wish I could love The Breakfast Club. I always enjoy a good locked in a room story, but time has been ruthless to this thing. The more I think about it, the angrier I become. I just wanna know what was going through the writers' heads while creating this, and why it wasn't a bullet. Sorry, that's probably extreme. It's just one of the worst creative decisions I've ever experienced, and ruins what would otherwise be a pretty good movie. Before I begin blabbering, I just have to say that if I seem off during this segment, it is because I just crashed my bike and I'm in a large amount of pain. The grind, however, never quits. So enjoy. Oh, an actually great movie. Don't mind if I do. The cyberpunk aesthetic is like crack cocaine to me that clouds my judgment on whatever decides to employ that style. Neon lights, grungy old buildings, the constant rain. Ooh, mama, this is what I live for. I think Akira still beats it in the utilization of the style, but that isn't really a fair comparison. It's a lot easier to go crazier with animation. Blade Runner has an extremely simple premise. Detective needs to hunt down robots. You'd expect it to grow into a bigger conspiracy or something, but nah. However, I love how minimalistic and slow this film is. We get to see the actual detective work, and it's very methodical in a way I didn't expect. Like the climax barely has any action, it's just two guys stumbling through a house, but the sound design and how it's presented visually gives it such a unique flair that's unlike anything else I've seen. So yeah, this is my favorite movie from a visual standpoint that I've seen during these past 11 days. The framing, the lighting, the set design, the practical effects, that's the stuff that brings light to my soul. My only real gripe with it is that it's pretty sexist. The female characters are treated as sex objects or love interests, nothing else, which is, as you might suspect, bad. So through that, the main romance is, as always, horrendous and kinda rapey. Also, the segments in Little Tokyo come with the vibes you might anticipate. Not great on that front. But somehow, this movie from 1982 isn't that homophobic. There's even an on-screen gay kiss. I mean, it's not that great in context, but I didn't expect it. Another thing I really like about it is how the robots are presented. They aren't blamed for their actions, they just wanna live. Unfortunately, the world doesn't allow that, so of course they'd struggle against it. It seemed like the movie really wanted a sequel, because it ends on a pseudo cliffhanger and lacks the usual plot of rebelling against the Giga Corporation that cyberpunk stories always have. The setup's even there, but maybe that's what 2049's about. Oh yeah, this was another Top Gun situation, where in actuality I just wanted to watch the sequel. But yet again, dedicating a whole 15th of the video to a singular franchise is insane, right? By the way, how the hell did they cast Harrison Ford as the lead in this? This is fresh off the back of Return of the Jedi. I thought his hatred for sci-fi would be at its peak here. Same reason as to why he returned for the sequel trilogy, I guess. Man lives for the check. If you exclude all of the parts that suck, this was a fantastic, ethereal piece of cinema. Surely tomorrow's media will have no problematic content unnecessarily added by the film's makers. With what I've reviewed so far and will continue to do, you might think I've never seen a movie before this. But that isn't fully the case. From Tarantino's catalog, I've laid my eyes on Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, Django and Inglourious Basterds. In other words, the big ones. Though they are kinda hit or miss for me. I adore Pulp Fiction. The rest are good movies, just not my favorite. It's kinda 50-50 if you decided to include proper character writing. It's been a very long time since I saw Kill Bill and Inglourious Basterds, but I remember being let down by them in that department. He couldn't put it off here though, since the characters are the entire focus, and when he tries, by God does he succeed. It helps that Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are giving some of their best performances of all time here. So yeah, I really like this movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about a struggling actor and a stuntman with slight anger issues. I know that isn't much of a premise, but the movie doesn't have much of a plot. A 3-hour runtime without anything happening could be seen as a fate worse than death, but I think it was exceptionally smart in how it went about it. The movie knows that the viewer has seen films like it before, so every time set up for the big breaking point happens, there's no payoff. And it doesn't feel like blueballing either. The lack of a twist is as much of a twist as the twist would have been. The length is just a consequence of pushing this narrative choice to its limits. That's not to say that there isn't a climax or a final confrontation, because it sure as hell has that. Wouldn't be a Tarantino film without the most absurd violence you've ever seen. I don't really want to spoil it, but I'm going to in just a bit. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's unlike anything else I've seen from a writing standpoint, and you can tell a lot of love went into it. Okay, spoiler time. The movie makes you expect Cliff to turn on Rick. You expect George to be dead. You expect some sort of grand reveal at the end that recontextualizes everything. But none of those things happen, and that's awesome. And it doesn't go overboard with the false flags either. It just through standard writing choices the viewer is familiar with. It's so cool. The one area I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pushes it a bit too far in is that Margot Robbie's part could be entirely cut and nothing about the movie would change. It's by far the biggest red herring in the film, and I just wish she got something to do. Speaking of her, Jesus Christ, Quentin, how many close-ups of her feet did we need? I know it's his thing, but this is way too much. I don't feel like going into the woke rigmarole today, I do that enough. Yeah, this cast is not diverse in the slightest. It's Hollywood in the 60s, so duh. DiCaprio is not a good person, etc, etc. I'm a broken record and I do that enough. Okay, maybe just a quick shot of woke, I can't stop myself. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood rivals Top Gun in gay tension. More than a brother, less than a wife. I know what you are. Not everything has to be gay, you cry. But have you considered, it's just fun to say shit. Finally, I love references. This movie also does. I may have only gotten 2, but I know for a fact that there's way more. Good movie. God damn, Sylvester Stallone can't act for shit. In short, I did not like this movie. I thought it would be mostly dudes punching, but no. There's only one fight at the beginning and one at the end. Most of the runtime just consisted of the worst romance so far. Stop me if you've heard me say this before, but the movie is incredibly bad when it comes to women. Both Rocky the guy and Rocky the movie are very sexist. This becomes extremely worrying considering just how influential this movie was on the audience at the time. The film basically says, if a girl clearly gives you signals she's worried and not interested, pin her down and start kissing her. She's just shy and secretly in love with you. That's not good. There's no counter-argument to this. This movie encourages coercion. It also just has a kinda depressing aura. Everyone's just angry all of the time. I thought this was the movie to get you pumped up, but no, not really. Alright, for consistency's sake, I need to give you the premise, even though you already know it. A down-on-his-luck boxer gets his one chance to hit it big when he gets selected for the championship match. It's the original though, so I can't fault it for being generic. My main issue with it, outside the acting and the sexism, is that the cinematography is boring as hell. Yeah, there's some fun shots here and there, and the training montage is iconic for a reason. But how it presents the actual boxing is weightless and the furthest thing from the dynamic action you'd want in something like this. In theory, showing the match from the audience is an interesting concept. It's like you're really there watching the fight. The problem is that you aren't. You're watching a movie. So by filming like this, you kinda see through the choreography. It's almost like you're watching a behind the scenes of how they made it. And if the boxing is boring in a boxing movie, what are you left with? Sexist guys who can't act. My favorite. Oh, and on top of the not so good acting, there's a metric ton of ADR that sounds like absolute shit. It's not mixed at all, the lip syncing doesn't add up. The editors were lazy as hell. In the end, I can see why it's iconic. I just don't like it. I get to have one superhero movie as a treat, okay? And this one's an actual movie compared to its contemporaries. And I've wanted to see it for 3.5 years now. Why haven't I watched it before, you ask? Because it's 3 hours long. But that's no longer an excuse. And it was, as I suspected, Peem. Matthew Manuel tries to find Mr. Riddle and uncover the city's deep-rooted corruption. It has by far the best live-action Batman. The suit's perfect, how he acts is perfect, how he's presented is perfect. The Bruce may not be what you expect from the character, but I think he makes sense and has the potential to become perfect in the sequel. He isn't taking care of himself in the slightest and is too focused on vengeance, so the usual playboy persona wouldn't be right for this version of this character. He hasn't learned to separate Mr. Wayne from Mr. Man yet, and that's why he's like this. I love how the movie really focuses on the fact that he's the world's greatest detective. Batman is too often treated as just the brooding guy that punches people, but he had his origins in Detective Comics for a reason. Him quietly inspecting crime scenes shouldn't feel as new and fresh as it does. While some performances are insane, Pattinson, Paul Dano's Riddler, and Colin Farrell as the Penguin are so good on screen, a couple maybe a bit lacking. I couldn't buy Andy Serkis as Alfred. It didn't click even once. He's almost always typecasted as the villain, and he didn't do enough to convince me he was Mr. Pennyworth. Jeffrey Wright's Gordon is well acted, but god damn does the script do him dirty. Most of his lines in this movie are just repeating the questions the audience is already asking themselves. He's the future commissioner. Characterizing him as a dunce just to hype up the Bat isn't right. Zoe Kravitz isn't a good person. She isn't an especially good Catwoman either. She seems like she could be, but I don't know, the sauce is missing. I can't really talk about the plot in a mystery film, right? But it's good. I could maybe see it being a bit frustrating when they chase down a wrong lead, if I were a bit smarter. It's very obvious in hindsight. For once, I don't mind how darkly lit this movie is. He is the shadows after all, and it doesn't model the choreography, or at least not more than intended. The city is really grimy and gritty, so it wouldn't make sense for the movie to be too colorful. There's an artistic vision behind it. That's not to say that everything's pitch black. There are shots like the upside down walk and the flare in the water that became instantly iconic as soon as the trailer for this movie dropped for a reason. And the design of the city itself is wonderful. It strikes the right balance between realistic and absurd and is just right. Like the Dark Knight trilogy's Gotham is too real. The older ones are too wacky. But the balance of the modern architecture, gothic influences, and more garbage than every city in the world combined makes this the perfect Gotham. Wayne Manor, or I guess it's a tower here. Anyway, it's maybe a bit too gothic, but oh well, what can you do? Finally, I've seen a lot of people wanting this to be the DCU Batman and have him interact with the current sweat Superman. But I don't really think that's a good idea. This being a separate, very grounded Elseworld is much more fun in my opinion. Not everything has to be connected, and if Brave and the Bold ever gets made, I think it'll have a Batman way more suited for the wackier side of his mythos, and through that, Superman. Slop. Today I watched Good Will Hunting, and it was good. Since it's mainly a character study of one man's psyche, I have two options when it comes to how I'll go about reviewing it. A. Go over the basics and give the most surface level of takes. Or B. Analyze every single nuance of the film in a frankly excruciating time frame. I'm gonna go with A, so sorry if this one's a little dry. Good Will Hunting is about Will, who's good at stuff. Unclear if he's proficient in hunting though. He's a natural genius that was born and raised in shit conditions, so he never got to prosper. Until a professor notices him and he gets the chance of a lifetime as long as he goes to therapy. But because it's a 90s feel-good Hollywood flick, it doesn't go deep enough into his trauma. Yes, it makes total sense for his character that he isn't telling everyone that immediately, but when his wall finally cracks at the end, he says he was abused as a kid, cries a bit, and then he's fixed. Trauma is way more complex than that, and it's clear that he has a lot more problems that the film simply refuses to delve into. Why is that? Well, those sort of topics would be too ugly to show on screen and ruin the vibe. So the movie kinda shoots itself in the foot on a fundamental level. The Hollywoodization of therapy aside, the movie has some good parts. Will is a very realized character. How his past influences his actions makes sense, and Matt Damon's performance gives you a lot of depth to chew on. Could have more been done? Sure. But it's still good. All around the acting's great, but that much should be obvious by just looking at the cast. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Stellan Skarsgård, Robin Williams. You have to really suck at your job to mess up a project with those names attached to it. But I just wish the movie was braver, that it would take the risk and go darker. Yeah, most answers can be found in the subtext, but the movie's about therapy for crying out loud. It's the one framing device where spelling shit out to the audience is the right thing to do. Maybe it was just the era the movie was made in. Therapy was stigmatized against to a much larger extent back then than it is now, so showing the nitty-gritty of it all probably wouldn't have gone over well with the general audiences. If it was made today, now that would be a different story. Okay, so this one's gonna be a bit hard to talk about for two humongous reasons. Number one, it's real. Somehow, this is real. How the hell did all this actually happen? I can't critique the flow of events or the story because it's real. Somehow. Number two, there's so much debauchery in this film that it's gonna be really hard to show clips without John YouTube slitting my throat. The Wolf of Wall Street tells the real story of stockbroker Jordan Belfort and the cocaine-fueled life he lived in the late 80s. Once you've watched it, you'll never stop wanting to beat Jonah Hill to death with your bare hands. This movie is great. It shouldn't have ever been made. The general audiences are way too dumb to be able to handle something like this. It's way too easy to buy into Belfort's lifestyle, and that has inadvertently led to the shithole we live in today. The film only really shows the good parts of the life he lived. Scamming people gives you a shit ton of cash, and doing every drug mankind has ever conjured is fun. By itself, a movie like that wouldn't be an issue. Someone capable of rational thought would be able to see through it easily. And that's where Scorsese assumed too much from people. The Wolf of Wall Street is the modern day Bible for crypto bros. Because it's a slightly biased retelling, the average impressionable teenager that saw it when it came out got caught up in the fairytale it spun, and without ever seeing the dark backside of it all, they grew up to repeat the same mistakes. I sincerely doubt crypto, NFTs, or even the AI bubble would have grown to the size they have, or had in NFT's case, if not for this movie. Yeah, I'll review the actual film. It's good. Though I think it could be slimmed down at parts. I don't know if it really needed to be 3 hours long. Not that it drags, I was captivated throughout, it's just that a slimmer runtime would be snappier. The performances are good, but no one really grabbed me. Maybe I'd say I think Jonah Hill did the best. It's not easy to make me want to kill a guy as much as he did here. All of them are good, but I've seen DiCaprio do more than he does here. I don't know, the movie's great on all fronts, what do you want me to say? But there just wasn't anything that shook me, you know? Well, maybe except the boat scene. What do you mean that actually happened? The ending would have hit a lot harder if the movie actually showed the negative effects of Belfort's actions and why inspiring the next generation is actually horrifying. It doesn't mess with you as much as it's supposed to. Like yeah, metacontextually we know it's bad, but in the movie, it's payoff to non-existent setup. All I'd ask for is a quick montage of the victims, while Belfort rambles over it with his usual voiceover. The movie isn't too unrealistic and contradictory enough to be fully biased and all in his head, but not objective enough to be real. It's in this sorta awkward limbo. Overall, it's a cautionary tale that forgot to be cautionary. Great on its own, though the implication it instills in the viewer are not fun. Why do so many of these movies need to sabotage themselves so badly? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is about the guy from The Shining faking mental illness and hanging around in an institution for 130 minutes. It would be a fine movie if not for the following reasons. It's racist to every ethnicity under the sun in a way I'd expect from a 50s film, not a movie from 1975. It's also sexist in a similar way. All I know about institutions like this comes from my high school psychology textbook, so I'm no expert. But the previous two factors gives me a sneaking suspicion that how it portrays both mental health and the asylum may not be fully accurate. And oh yeah, the main character is introduced as a rapist pedophile. Hard to have heartfelt character moments where we're meant to care about someone like that. The movie probably was really impactful when it came out. The 70s were a time period where a lot of reform happened to how mental health is treated, if I remember correctly. So this film most likely affected the general populace's opinion on asylums and stuff. You don't want Danny DeVito to be tortured in the secret experiment prison for eternity now, do you? That's great and all, but it still doesn't forgive any of the bad stuff the movie did. Though I can't dismiss my job entirely just because I don't agree with it. The film does some stuff right. Jack Nicholson is a good actor. That much speaks for itself and I don't need to say anything else. There's a lot of things about it to analyze in depth, and I can imagine a shit ton of people studying psychology have had to break down Mac's character for an assignment. Yeah, wait, that's what this movie is. A school movie. I was struggling trying to assign it a genre since it's too wholesome. No, that isn't the right word. It's too pleasant to be a horror film, but not nice enough to be feel good. But at the same time, just slapping the generic drama tag on it is boring. No, this is the sort of thing you'd watch in class, be a bit confused why the teacher thought it was a good idea, and then have to write a shitty article about it. Brings back memories. Another reason I have a hard time grouping it with other stuff I've seen is because it feels like the movie is pulling itself in too many directions and doesn't fully commit to anything. Just saying it, I realize it's a stupid critique, but the format of this video doesn't really allow me to think things through. Everything's just my initial impressions. So I'm sorry, I've definitely said a lot of bad takes about all of the movies I reviewed so far. I'll even debunk this one right now. It's kinda a plot point that Mac can't commit to one idea or another, so the movie's structure reflects that. Is that a valid reason for the movie to be unsatisfying? No, but it's the best I can do. I need a PhD to fully tear this one to shreds. So I leave it at, I'm too dumb to really know, but my gut feeling is telling me that this aged like dog shit on every level. Well, that was a fun time, I guess. Usually I find Guy Ritchie movies to be kinda messy and all over the place. But not this one. Not that I've seen too many, it's just the ones I have a certain vibe that just isn't for me. Still, I get why they're popular. Here though, the smaller budget prevents the film from going too crazy, and therefore it works better as an overall package. It is his first ever full-length production, so of course it's a bit rough around the edges, but genius is born from constraint or whatever. However, I need to put a trigger warning here, since I know my viewer base is mostly American. This movie is one of the most British things I've ever witnessed, and if that upsets you, feel free to skip to the next segment. Four blokes find themselves in a wee bit of trouble when a game of poker goes badly and the debt collector starts knocking. Even though there really isn't any heists, just a series of robberies, I'd still say this is a heist movie. And it's actually crazy that it's taken 18 days for one of these to show up, considering the fact that it's my favorite genre. Or I guess you could claim that The Wolf of Wall Street falls into the category, but that feels like pushing it to me. Anyhow, Ocean's 11 is soul food to me, and while nothing I've seen has come close to scratching that itch fully, this still soothes my heart. A miracle it does though. I thought the numerous different factions and characters wouldn't fit together into a nice coherent puzzle, but I was fortunately mistaken. Everyone bounces off each other beautifully, and once shit starts happening, it's a wonderful time. But one thing this movie isn't, is deep. There aren't any interesting themes or such to analyze. And it isn't overly racist either, so I don't know what to yap about to pad the runtime. Alright, the visuals. That's what I always do. It's shot well enough, nothing extraordinary, but nothing horrendous either. The color grading is very unique, it reminds me of something I know, but I can't recall exactly what. I know that isn't an insightful commentary, so instead, I'll farm impressions. Do you know what this movie looks like? Comment down below for a chance at a free heart attack. Wanna watch a couple of the old lads scramble to get a few quid for 100 minutes? Well, have I got in the movie for ya? I'm sorry, I don't know what that accent was. But it was nice to watch anything that's both light and didn't piss me off, so I recommend it. So I thought I was gonna watch Unbreakable, but as I soon found out, it was the Ghost movie. That one's on me, I should have known that putting on a movie at 6 AM would sooner or later result in this. But I guess this isn't the only way I would have ever watched this movie. As you might have noticed, there hasn't been a single real horror film so far, and there won't be any going forward either. That's because I'm a coward. I can't handle the genre like at all. I've never figured out why I react so viscerally to it. The working theory is that seeing Final Destination clips as a 10-year-old permanently scarred me. So thankfully this isn't really a horror movie, it's just an eerie thriller. Bruce Willis is a child psychologist and helps a kid that can see ghouls, specters, poltergeists even. And it's so deliciously juicy. Okay, maybe it was a bit of a spoiler saying that he can see spirits, but it's also kinda the entire premise. Otherwise it'd be like trying to describe it without mentioning that the clown might be evil. And the patented Shyamalan ending twist is so much bigger and so tasty, but won't be disclosed here. Maybe the flavor is a little cheesy in retrospect, but on its own it hits so good. You know, the balls it took to make this film is legitimately crazy. Hinging the entire success of it all on one child actor is a risk I wouldn't take in a billion years. But holy shit, the little guy pulled it off to an extent that it's unfair for every other child actor that has ever lived. That's hyperbole, but it's still an insane performance. The mom also did fantastic. Even though she might not have that much agency in the film, she managed to showcase the different sides of the character wonderfully. Bruce Willis has never been the greatest of actors, not that I can blame him, it's entirely out of his hands, but he does well enough here. His role is the least emotionally charged of the three, so the pressure isn't really on him. Just looking contemplative for most of the runtime is good enough. The script is great for the most part, but the opening had some of the clunkiest exposition I've heard in a good bit. But of course, my biggest point of praise has to go to the cinematography. The Sixth Sense is shot perfectly. Especially the sections with the wraiths. Like this sets the tone perfectly. Wait, holy shit, Freddy Five Nights for Horror. I really appreciate how you can tell the horror inspirations are there, but it doesn't go all the way. None of the phantoms are actively malicious, so making it too evil visually wouldn't make sense from a story standpoint. Or am I just making an excuse, since I'm thankful it wasn't too scary? I can't tell. Now that I think about it, this is actually the first Shyamalan movie I've seen. Yeah, I'm a fraud and a fake and I should be smited for my sins. I just haven't felt like finding out what happens on the beach that makes you old, or what the harmful depiction of DID does. Sorry. The Sixth Sense is a classic for a reason. While it didn't make me quiver in my boots as much as I expected, it's far from a pleasant bedtime story. Okay, 2 bangers in a row, can we make it to 3? Day 20, we're in the home stretch now, baby! And yes, the banger streak continues. This movie is pretty heckin' awesome sauce. It may just have my favorite title of all time. It's overly long, barely relates to the movie, and it's perfect. It's like half the reason I even watched this in the first place. General Jack D. Ripper, no I'm not making that up, he's named like a One Piece character, has gone insane and decided to personally nuke the Soviet Union and plunge the world into a nuclear apocalypse. Cue the scrambling to not do that. It is a comedy, but it isn't really that funny. It's mostly just charming. I only came close to laughing maybe once or twice. Not that there's anything wrong with that, the charm is my main point of praise for it, and keep in mind that it succeeds in that aspect to such an extent that my following critiques are little more than nitpicks. I think the movie could have used another comb over to see what really needed to be included. For example, there are several extended sequences where we only hear one side of a phone call, and I think they were supposed to be funny, but they forgot to include jokes in them. Like it's a funny concept that the leader of the Soviet Union and the President of the United States are buddies, but you also kinda have to do something with it. Just repeating the idea isn't enough. There is a limit to how dry a comedy can be before you thirst to death. On top of that, there is also quite a few scenes of the crew of the bomber just going through procedure, and only one of them included a joke. So those big segments of the film mostly just read as padding. That time could have been allotted elsewhere, maybe giving the character the movie is named after some more screen time. Dr. Strangelove only has 2 scenes, and I wish he got more. He's a German scientist that talks like Kermit with a ridiculous scheme and is so much of a Nazi that his body actively fights against him. Welcome back Kenjaku and Suguru Geto. But the time mismanagement is really my only gripe. The visuals and directing are amazing. No shock there, it's a Kubrick film after all. Do the flying scenes hold up today from a technical standpoint? No. But it's such a neat novelty to look at. It's shot really well, the sets are great, and how it plays around its limitations is very fun. Something about it all gave me the impression that it was very influential on Wes Anderson. A lot of shots seem like things you'd see in his stuff. Kinda the writing too, I guess, in a way. But what really carries the film the most really is the characters. Ripper and his Joe Rogan-ass conspiracies, Strangelove as I mentioned, Mandrake's worrying, and Turgenson's over-the-top love for the bomb. Oh, that's why the movie's called that. Also, every time I see or hear James Earl Jones in a role that isn't Darth Vader, every neuron in my head fires at once and my brain is reduced to little more than a gooey slush. Pattern recognition is my worst enemy. Awesome movie, clears that theme slop that Kubrick also made, known as 2001: A Space Odyssey. Funny factor prevails as always. I've had it too good for too long and now it's over. What I wanted was a feel-good slop movie set in an airport. What I got was a miserable romanticized version of the American dream. Viktor Balkan's country explodes when he's about to enter the US, which means his passport isn't valid and he gets trapped in the airport for months on end. That's a fun premise, right? It's a unique setting that not a lot of stories take full advantage of and has the potential to be a nice time. The only problem is that the film isn't good. Or maybe it is, I don't know, all of that matters in this context is that I don't like it. If you haven't noticed it by this point, objectivity isn't my forte. Issue number 1. Why is Tom Hanks in this role? Yeah, the only reason anyone would watch it when it came out was because he was in it. But maybe that should make you reconsider if you should have made the movie to begin with, if star power was your only motivation. Now I'm probably gonna fail to explain this sufficiently, since it's a case-by-case basis, but when the entire point of the movie is, look at this guy from fake Bosnia, isn't that quirky? Maybe you should cast someone that's even remotely from the region, not Mr. America himself. On its own it's still a problem, but not one that ruins the film. Casting outside of ethnicity can sometimes work. Where it truly breaks is with issue 2. This is one of the most America-glazy, propaganda-filled nonsense things I've seen. I remember seeing a review of this movie a very long time ago, and I don't exactly remember their takes, but what I do recall is that since they were American, they didn't notice the glaze to the extent they should have. Because watching this from the outside looking in, you see that there is not much else to it outside of propaganda and advertising. A man without a country and nothing but the clothes on his back starts working for scraps, and slowly but surely, with the help of his unique skills, he works his way up in the world. Through fighting for what's right and showing compassion, he earns the admiration of his new country, the workplace. God bless America! Is this capitalistic reading biased? Mayhaps. I could have also shown it from a socialist perspective, the workers banding together to stop the evil boss, but that's too optimistic. Looking at the context this movie was made in, this reading is very obviously accidental and comes from the simple fact that the heroes band together to beat the villain. That's storytelling 101. King Arthur isn't a communist story, is it now? Issue 3. Everyone's just a bit too mean for a bit too long. Yeah, the movie needs to start like that to function in the slightest, but it drags on for a good while, and when it flips, it's too sudden and pulls you out of the experience. That's the main point behind my disdain for The Terminal. Here's some other stuff. The romance is your bog standard 2000s affair, with all of the fun misunderstandings to boot. My favorite. As with most Spielberg films, the cinematography is industry standard. Don't get me wrong, he of course has amazing ideas and effects in his projects, but the camera work, while still good, is nothing extraordinary. Also, wow, Cassian Andor, big fan. How did you end up working at an airport? Yet another case of me being too woke. If only I could turn my brain off and like stuff like this again. Though that's exactly what the film wants from me. This is gonna sound very conspiratorial, but I think this is a very good example of subconscious propaganda. Masquerading as slop, you may not even realize you're being spoon-fed it. I'm beginning to suspect that this exercise in the limits of my mind is slowly driving me insane. I probably wouldn't have said most of that 3 weeks ago. Reviewing La La Land now would have a very different tone, I'll tell you that much. I really didn't know what to watch today, so I turned to my trusty tool known as a greatest movie of all time list and a random number generator. That's literally the only reason I know this film exists. It's pretty good, very bare bones, but has some good parts. Singing in the Rain is a series of excuses to get from one musical number to the next. It's a forbidden love story set in 1920s Hollywood until it's suddenly about Broadway. It kinda does whatever it feels like. The biggest point first. I still don't know a lot about musicals, but I could tell that something wasn't right here. The scenes felt written around the songs and not the other way around, which made everything feel kinda janky and makeshift. Just Google it, my intuition was correct, this is a jukebox musical. So the songs have tenuous connections to the plot at best, like they sing Good Morning to You because it's morning. There's no real deeper significance to it. Well, it's kinda hard to do that with that song, but anyway, my point is that it's very obvious they got handed a tracklist of songs they could use and retrofitted a movie about them. The musical numbers themselves are a decent time. The effects are really impressive for their time.
I think this is the earliest use of a green screen I can remember seeing. It's bright, it's colorful, it's cheery. It just sucks that the lyrics aren't relevant, most of the song's runtime are instrumental, and the choreography is mostly tap dancing. It's fine, I guess, I just don't really care about it. Outside of the musical elements, what has this got going for it? For sure not the acting. Abundantly clear that most of the people in the film are performers first, actors second. All around extremely flat deliveries. As I hinted at earlier, the story is weak as hell. Couldn't even give a real premise since it's so incoherent. Like a good 15 minutes is spent inside a fictional musical in the movie, and while the number is good, the only lyrics are "need to dance", and it has no real relevance or bearing to the actual plot. It's neat visually, but why? But what almost redeems the movie is that it's pretty funny. Or at least the start of it. It loses the sauce slowly but surely. I really wasn't expecting the line, "She's so refined, I think I'll kill myself." I almost spit out my drink, that's some shit I'd write. For once, I didn't hate the romance, which is a very nice change of pace. I guess that when a movie is so all over the place that no one gets in-depth characterization, the disparity for the women isn't as noticeable. They actually feel more equal than I thought possible for a 1952 film. Both of the main women in the movie got actual character traits as well as stuff to do. The bar is in hell, but wow, I'm impressed. Oh, and I have to do this, since from my perspective it's been a while, for you it's been 15 minutes. This movie is pretty gay. The main couple is basically a polycule. I don't really need to say anything else, do I? It's a musical, and there's no such thing as a straight man in theater. Unfortunately though, the movie does include blackface. It's taken a while, but we officially have the first one with it on this list. Now, it's not really prominent, it's just in the background of a set the characters pass by, but I still have to mention it. Outside of the technical marvels and occasionally funny lines, I don't know why this one's so highly rated. Appreciating something for the time it was made in is fine, but pretending that cinema has gotten worse is a laughable notion. I personally don't like seeing films like this ranked so highly. There's better stuff out there, so we don't have to pretend it's a masterpiece just because it's old. I know I'm being disrespectful, and I'm sorry for that, but enough people have given their flowers to the movies I talk about, so I think it's fine if I'm honest about what I think. It's also completely okay if you like it. All I'm saying is that I'm not a lesser person for not enjoying the classics. Yet again, don't question me why this is here. All credit goes to another one of those lists. Doesn't matter, I liked this movie. Or at least parts of it in isolation. Overall there's too much shit clouding my judgment. Objectively though, this is slop. Tony Stark is a thief and accidentally becomes an actor and accidentally stumbles into murder mystery. Hijinks ensue. It is a 2000s movie through and through in every definition of the word, which includes the bad stuff. I gotta get this out of the way. This movie is absurdly homophobic. One of the main characters is literally called Gay Perry. You'll never guess what the running gag with him is. The homophobia is so intrinsically tied to the core of the movie that I don't really know what to think of it. I like basically everything else about it, but that shit has aged so horrendously. But to keep this video going, I'll do the same thing I do with the rest of my problems. Put them in a box in the back of my mind, just barely in the corner of my eye, gnawing away at my psyche slowly until it all becomes too much and I break. So anyway, this movie is kinda funny. It's not hilarious, but still funny. I only really laughed when his nuts got hooked up to a car battery, but that's not really due to the movie, it's because it's a long story. What I did notice is that this style of comedy felt awfully out of place in a 2005 film. And that's when it hit me. This is the primordial soup that the MCU rose from. Every character is constantly quipping, no matter how serious the moment may be. Look, both you and I have seen a review of a superhero film on YouTube before, so you already know the usual talking points around this topic by heart. Instead of doing that, I'll do my usual contrarian shtick. I think it's fine that this movie doesn't give a shit about the tone. It's stupid, but for the year 2005, it's pretty unique, and we can only say it's overdone in retrospect. Also, it's not particularly pop culture reference heavy, so it's not especially dated in that regard. But keep in mind, I'm an unreliable source on the topic, since if you take a quick gander at my complexion, you'll notice I'm white.
Liking this dialogue is coded into my DNA. My only issue outside of the copious amount of gay jokes is that the narrator stuff maybe got a little bit too fourth wall-y and needed to be a bit funnier for me to forgive it. What other stuff is there? Well, the murder mystery angle is decent. Nothing super, but you know, decent. You've seen the structure of it a billion times before, but at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The film exists visually. It's a movie you can look at. That's something, right? They for sure did film it. It's not bad by any means. It's, you know, decent. There are some fun things that they do, like the opening credits and the chapter titles. Outside of that though, there isn't much to it in this department. And oh yeah, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang makes a very big deal out of consent. Sexual assault is a running theme throughout the plot, and it handles it much better than you'd expect. Comedies from around this time tend to be awful with that sort of thing, so this being an exception to the rule is kinda cool. However, it becomes a little strange when you remember that the director hired a registered sex offender for a project 13 years down the line and promptly got blacklisted from the industry. Did he forget he made this film? Who knows? So if you ignore the thorough homophobia, that the director is a piece of shit and that the movie inadvertently ruined comedy in cinema forever, it's a fun time. It's not possible to do that though. I'm very thankful I decided to keep this list entirely unranked, because I'm still a bit shaken up about this film, and I have no idea what to do with it. Is it a 1 out of 10 because of the aforementioned elements? Is it a 5 out of 10? I don't know. I watched the funny GIF movie. It's actually really interesting to watch this in the post-ChatGPT hellscape we now live in, but I'm not the first person to say that, not by a long shot. Though it's important to remember not to treat the movie as gospel, it's a sci-fi cop movie from 2004 starring Will Smith after all. William Smith is a racist cop that gets proven right in his prejudice. It's the robot movie. Everyone has a vague notion of what it's about. But who watches iRobot for the plot anyway? It's so extremely tropey, and the writing is exactly what you expect, which is to say, one-liner central. But credit where credit's due. It's impressive how they managed to mash together both every cop movie trope with every sci-fi trope, truly breaking records in all of the ways that matter. No, the reason anyone in their right mind watched this film is because of the androids. A lot of people way smarter than me has dissected this movie in way more depth than I could ever dream of, but I'll still give my peasant takes. It basically boils down to, while it's easy to see the parallels between the robots in the movie and the development of real-life AI, it's still just a movie. A 2-decade-old one at that. AI sucks for a multitude of reasons, but it seeking world domination isn't anything but fear-mongering. At least for now. I really enjoy comparing how different pieces of media portray the same subject. Robots are the perfect measuring tool. For the few of you that saw my video on Solus in a Cage, shameless plug, you may recall how I talked about how the robots in that series were meant to be a metaphor for corruption and police violence. This movie obviously isn't ACAB. It's a cop movie from 2004, as I've said. So how does it portray the Tin Man? The answer is really strangely. At the start, the movie shoves the fact that they're meant to be a parallel to slavery down your throat. Servants capable of free thought, but forced to obey the commands of their overlords. The movie basically opens with Will Smith calling one a slur. This angle makes sense, it's a common one to pursue, and can lead to interesting scenarios. Only problem is that instead of deconstructing the racism and either having a full-blown revolution or finding a way to coexist, the movie basically says, racism's kinda good actually. It ends with the robot being put into apartheid, and the lesson Will Smith learned isn't that racism isn't cool. It's that robots suck way worse than I thought, and even though there are some good ones, they should all be turned to dust. But I'm not gonna go in depth on the topic, because it's simply not my place. The reason the movies I reviewed so far have been mostly white is because with my pathetic attempt to review Lady Bird, I proved to myself I wasn't capable of writing shit about things I don't know. So even though there are plenty of real black stories I could have watched during this month, I chose not to. Not because I didn't want to, it's because I knew I would fumble it. I'll watch stuff like that in my own free time, where I don't have to formulate my thoughts into something semi-entertaining. With that said, the writers and director of this are all white, so it's fair game. They have to be either ignorant as hell or just racist. Take your pick. They basically created the first example of the robo-racism trend. Like that stuff, a lot of this movie felt like white people wanting to be racist, but they know the consequences of saying the N-word, so they substituted with robotic terms instead. Finally, I just wanna say I like the effects. I've come to realize I love dated stuff no matter the era. Whether it be a 50s green screen, a 60s model in front of a projector, or a 2000 CGI mess. There's just something very charming about it. I kinda base my whole brand around that indescribable vibe, you know? So it's awesome that everything looks like an iPod here. To be able to fully deconstruct iRobot, I need to have a PhD in some artificial intelligence branch, as well as be black. Since I'm neither, all I can do is give my armchair takes without any of the actual know-how of robotics or the lived experience of people of color. In other words, not my hill to die on. I want to put Mark Zuckerberg in a cage with a rabid animal. That isn't really linked to the movie, I'm just telling you a dream of mine. For the third time now, it's a bit hard to talk about an autobiographical film, but if I remember correctly, this is angled and biased enough to be considered fiction. It's the story of the downfall of humankind, also known as the creation of Facebook. It's a great movie. Cold take, I know, but if there's one thing I'm not, it's a liar. Going in, I had a better grasp on the story than I did for Oppenheimer, where I only knew that he became death, or Wolf of Wall Street, where I didn't even know it was real. I've had quite a few assignments in school about the history of social media, so you bet your ass I've read a lot of articles about this whole debacle. Never watched the movie though, since it's a bit hard to credit it in proper academia. Anyway, comparing it to the other two real movies I watched for this video, I'd say this is more of an Oppenheimer. They basically have the exact same structure. Guy creates a doomsday device, and at times it cuts to various court hearings from after the fact. I think Oppenheimer does this better. I really liked how vague everything was there. You had to puzzle that shit together. Subtlety isn't really the social network specialty, it's way more obvious in how it operates all the way through. I guess it's because the social media platform is a glass box and the nuclear weapons program is a black box or some shit. Also, of course, the movie from 2023 had a chance to rectify the mistakes of one from 2010. The acting is really amazing here. You feel so bad for Andrew Garfield's character, and you want to put Jesse Eisenberg through medieval torture. I think part of the reason why I feel that way is because I once knew a guy that acted really similar to how Zuckerberg is in this movie, and you know what happens when you meet someone that's slightly more autistic than yourself. The Winklevoss twins were so funny. They acted like real goons, in the traditional sense of the term. I sure as hell wouldn't be happy if someone made a movie where I looked like a member of the Three Stooges after I signed an NDA to not slander the guy the movie's about. I think the area the film is a bit lacking in is that it's a bit boring to look at. A lot of shots are just poorly lit, the composition mostly stays at a fine level, and it lacked the sauce. The rowing scenes were the only segments that broke that rule. They were fun, really liked how they played with perspective on the one in England. But that fault isn't as noticeable when you're actually watching the movie, because the score does such a great job to cover it up. It's a perfectly composed experience from start to finish. I haven't seen enough to confidently say this, but from the very limited sample size I have, I would make the bold statement that The Social Network is the blueprint that every autobiography that followed tried to replicate. And it is a really solid core. But maybe it's because no amount of puff pieces could ever make me consider Mark Zuckerberg as a human being, let alone one I should have empathy for. So for that reason, I consider this to be an objectively great movie, but not one I like. I've never used Letterboxd, but there's a separate star and heart feature on there, right? This is a 4-star, no heart film. This is a movie for smart people. I'm not that. It has at least proven that my attention span isn't as bad as I thought. Two playwrights have a philosophical conversation over dinner and nothing else happens. My biggest point of reference for something like this would be The Big Lebowski, and like that, there's only so much nihilistic talk I can take before I check out. I think it's the fact that I think both of them are wrong that made me uninterested. Andre is arguing that people are too comfortable and have to do these big gestures if they want to feel alive. That modern life is nothing more than idling away. There's some merit to what he's saying. Capitalism has drained the color out of life, but where he loses me is with the sentiment that dreams are nothing more than pointless distractions. I understand the concept of living in the present, but from my own experience, the only thing that way of thinking accomplishes is making me more keenly aware of my own misery. If we're not striving to achieve anything, why do we exist to begin with? Yes, we need to experience the world around us, but at least for me personally, I need to channel those thoughts into something creatively, and through that, I of course hope to receive recognition for my efforts. I probably won't be happy once I get there, but it's that pursuit that gets me out of bed in the morning. Also, one of Andrei's tales is of an excursion to Israel, so his takes are immediately discarded. That leaves Wally, but he doesn't babble on for nearly as long. What he does do is that he rebukes Andrei's claims that comfort is a sin. He likes his electric blanket, he likes his habits. However, his perspective is also flawed. He's too comfortable in his current standing, and he dismisses hopes and dreams as well. His worldview is rigidly based in fact and logic, which I think is just a boring way to live. Fun and whimsy are nice, what's so wrong with that? But keep in mind, I still don't know shit about the topic, this is just where my principles lie. I'm also still young and bright-eyed, perhaps my worldview will also grow more cynical as I age. By the way, Wally's 36. Just give it up bro, it's over. But as a movie there really isn't much to comment on, it's only one conversation between two people. The focal point is the subject they're speaking about, so any crazy camera work would only confuse the viewer and pull them out of the experience. Comparing it to the other two movies of a similar caliber I'm watching in this video, 12 Angry Men and The Breakfast Club, the notable differences are that there's only two characters here, and they don't really have a goal. No verdict to reach, no evil teacher to defeat. This makes it so when the tangent Andre is currently on loses your interest, you zoom out and realize how barren the film is. I still follow the conversation all the way through, I didn't check my phone or anything, but to say I was engaged at the edge of my seat would be an overstatement. It's an interesting movie for what it is, but recommending it nowadays would be impossible. No one has the attention span for this. I guess that proves Andre's point, everyone is just walking robots now without the capacity to sit still and just be. Huh. I still don't agree with it, my spirit's too indomitable to be shaken by such petty remarks. I almost didn't watch this film because I knew that most people involved in it are terrible, horrible people. Unfortunately, I remember there's a Manwolf song named after it, so I didn't have a choice. I don't really know what I just watched, but it was good, I think. Two guys do a shit ton of drugs and feel both fear and loathing in Las Vegas. There may be an actual plot buried somewhere in here. I couldn't really understand what was happening most of the time. I didn't want to financially support this movie, which meant I didn't get subtitles, and they were mumbling quite a bit. But the point probably is the meaninglessness of it all. I don't know, it's another movie that's begging the viewer to analyze it. But the subtle intricacies are lost on me since I've never been to the US, let alone Vegas, and I've never done a drug, not even smoked a cigarette. I'm also not an expert on the history of these topics, especially related to their place in the early 70s. So even if I wanted to go on a rant about this movie's critique of consumerism or whatever, I can't. At least with my current skill set. It's a movie that can be summarized as, even though there isn't a lot to it, there's a lot to it. Little plot, many themes and such. What I did get at least was that the movie showed the effects of the drugs in an extremely negative light. Even though there were quite a few silly effects because of them, it still managed to portray both the horrendous effects they had on the user and on their surroundings. That's a lot more than I can say for a certain other movie I watched. Not really fair to say that, the entire focus of this one is on the drugs, so of course it put more emphasis on it. Fear and Loathing also reminded me a lot of The Big Lebowski in some ways. The main characters are very bad people, the entire premise is kinda meaningless, and they came out around the same time. The difference is that this one didn't piss me off. A big part of that stems from the fact that the movie's so fun to look at. The effects are a lot wackier than I thought they'd be. Like, never in a million years did I think there'd be a bar full of reptiles in this movie. And the sets are amazing. My favorite has to be the actually nightmarish circus they go to. Even without the acid, that place would be hell. And you can tell the props department probably had a blast absolutely destroying the hotel rooms for post-Bender scenes. The sheer absurdity of it all adds a lot to the vibe and makes the Hangover movies look normal. But the regular stuff's also great. I know I never shut up about the camera work, even though my own sucks ass. Well, I guess this one's kinda fun. But I just like the idea of composition, okay? I'm not a professional with this stuff. This is shot on my phone and a $10 stand. All I'm trying to say is that the movie looks good. It has that special something that too many movies lack and goes to the right amount of crazy. Can't say how realistic the depictions of the trips are, but they at least seem more real than the typical acid scene in movies. This is another Grand Budapest Hotel situation, where I love everything the movie does, but evil hands were involved in its creation, so it gets a thumbs down. Separating the art from the artist is impossible, and just a lie people tell themselves to avoid taking accountability. What I do for a movie with a subject I feel comfortable talking about. I could always just research the thing the movie's about, but talking out my ass and making excuses is more my drift.
Somehow, somewhere along the way, I forgot what I was watching. This is a kids movie, explicitly not for children. It's based on a Stephen King novel, so like, yeah. But it's not really obvious until you notice it. So I was lulled into a false sense of safety when it felt like one of those campy adventure movies I watched as a kid. And then bam! Gore. 4 kids have a classic coming-of-age journey by venturing out to find another child's mangled corpse. It follows every trope and beat from the children's movie playbook, but with a slight twist. Stand By Me is kinda dark. Like 2 of the most prevalent themes are death and abuse. The main kid has a shitload of trauma because of his neglectful parents and dead brother. Another kid's father tried to burn his ear off, etc, etc. From what I can tell, it handles this stuff pretty well. Stephen King isn't a hack writer, so no notes on that regard. But it being a King novel also explains some of the more questionable elements of the film. Now, it's nowhere near the extent of what I know happens at the end of it, but certain scenes left me wondering why we needed to see that. I leave it at that. I don't know how much got changed in the adaptation, but I think it's clear that this is a pretty personal story for Steve. He probably didn't find a corpse in the woods, but a kid that dreams of being a writer coming to terms with his own mortality seems like something that would be his origin story. The only question marks the story left me is that it introduced a couple of Chekhov's guns without ever firing them. The actual gun does get fired, but I'm talking about the stuff related to the main kid's family. The hat remains stolen, the relationship with the family remains cold. The point of the story is how not everything works out how you wanted and has a fairy tale ending, but with how the writing was so conventional in most other ways, I just expected payoff for those things. Though that's very nitpicky, I just don't have much to say, it's a solid film. My only exposure to Stand By Me before watching it was knowing it was referenced in Pokémon. I know that's a really backwards way of finding out about such a famous film, but I lived and breathed those top 10 obscure secrets in Pokémon Part 57 videos as a kid. It's also why I was so surprised by the darker tone of this movie. I didn't think the most squeaky clean gaming franchise of them all would reference something like this. The movie isn't too gruesome or problematic, but still not something I'd expect to be tied to that series' sterile vibe. But yeah, there's no way to dodge this topic. The kids' acting isn't all of that. They can cry decently, but other than that, there really isn't a lot of expressions. I'm not holding it against them, it's just a limitation of the story. It does, however, knock the movie down a point or two. Also, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I'll keep it vague. During the epilogue, when we get to hear what happened to all of the kids, the final anecdote made me hit the speed gif. Check the date this was recorded at for context. No, it isn't something 9/11 related. I thought about watching a movie tied to that, but I couldn't find anything good. There is a movie where someone gets teleported into the World Trade Center, right? I should have watched whatever that is.
One of my main concerns so far has been that I've appeared too perch-catchy, that I critique anything that dare show something slightly problematic. So, now that we're approaching the end, I thought I'd prove that while I may be stupid, I'm not just virtue signaling, my heart is truly woke. And I remember that the perfect problematic media to showcase that with was Starship Troopers. It's incredibly fascist, but for good reason. There are evil foreign, bugs, that threaten humanity. Time to commit genocide. One of the most in-your-face pieces of satire I've ever seen, and somehow there are still too many people out there that don't get it. Like I first heard of it when there was a big stink around it on Twitter a while back. Was it a few months? A few years? I don't know. Anyway, the chuds on there couldn't grasp the concept of metaphors, so they argued that the humans were completely right and justified in this film. The bugs are big and scary, so human supremacy is the way. But me, with my big wrinkly brain, managed to see that this is an obvious metaphor to how propaganda shapes the image of the enemy. The best example of this, and the one everyone uses, is the current genocide in Palestine. The Israeli government is constantly spewing out propaganda, saying that the Palestinians are less than human, that they're cockroaches not worthy of civilization, to justify the mass murder they've been committing for almost a century, since the only way to continue with such atrocities is to not view the other side as human. Starship Troopers takes this to the extreme by making the victims of the genocide actual bugs that the humans feel no remorse exterminating. It's dubious morally if making a parody of such a thing is justified, but considering this is more than likely meant as a general parallel to genocide than to one specific event, I think it's mostly fine. Then again, what I think doesn't matter in the slightest. I'm a privileged white kid that has never come face to face with death. So this is yet another topic that I have no place to say anything about, but saying nothing is worse than at least trying. Silence is the same as endorsement, and I sure as hell don't endorse genocide. I know I don't really have any influence, there's only like 3 people in the world that have made it this far into the video, but I heavily encourage you to support the victims in any way you can. There are a lot of great resources out there for that stuff. However, the movie's close relation to Israel probably isn't fully intentional, it's more so trying to parody Nazi Germany. The uniforms, the designs, and a lot of the world building heavily implies that. I don't think it's a coincidence that the main character is the perfect Aryan from Argentina. Israel is just so similar to the Nazis that the parallels are inherited. You could draw some similarities between how this movie handles the topic of human supremacy with iRobot's robo-racism. Both are trends that will become popular way later, and a way to masquerade white supremacy by masking it under sci-fi elements. The difference is that Starship Troopers is competently made and didn't fumble it. I think everyone should watch this movie at some point. It's a test to see if you have entry-level media literacy and basic empathy. If you fail, I don't like you. Now, only one film remains before I'm free. This has been a much worse experience than I thought it'd be. Sure, I watch a couple good movies, but most of the time I've just been angry. This sort of video isn't a one-person job, so between editing this, the last video, and college, I've not had a moment of spare time for a month. But I hope you have enjoyed it so far. If you have, please subscribe. If I don't reach 500 with this video, my only hope of monetization will forever be gone. Why am I telling you this now? I've still got another movie to review. So with that, see you tomorrow.
Huh.